Hello and welcome back to another episode of Media Munchers. I'm Mathian,
And I'm Adrian.
and we don't have a lot, but we have a lot for you today. Starting with the new Hawkeye trailer. I haven't seen it yet. You have, correct, Big Apple?
Yeah, I have.
All right. Without further ado, we're gonna watch it and get right back to you. Man, okay, all right. Now that is a good trailer. I don't know how you felt about that. I mean, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I'm curious to see how much of the tone
Is
is actually represented in the trailer.
that is a good point because
It seems like very heavy into Christmas,
right, of
and
course.
obviously it is set in Christmas. But I wonder if it's a little more like Iron Man 3, or if it's even heavier into that Christmas theme.
So do you think, what I'm trying to read between the lines here, is your
Yeah.
initial concern that it's going to be too focused on portraying a happy tone with like a lot of dark stuff happening, or like?
Well, it's interesting because like last time we saw Hawkeye, he did lose a lot of.
Yeah, it was dark. It was a
yeah.
really dark period in his life, especially in Endgame.
Yeah. They brought it up. He was Ronin at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously he did a lot of I guess darker
Yeah,
stuff.
a lot of murders.
Yeah, yeah. Took out some bad guys.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm interested to see like, because generally speaking, for me, I'm not too big into Christmas movies.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how if this is gonna fit within his own story, so to speak.
That's a good point
Yeah.
because like how much of this, because obviously the tone's putting off a very the trailer's putting off a very certain tone where it's like it's happy, it's jovial, there's hijinks, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. But like, how much of that is gonna supersede the darker undertones? You know what I mean? Because like
Mhm.
at some point, it's like you said, he's trying to run from his past or kind of deal with it, put it behind him. But like all of that happened, and yeah, he got his family back. But like, what about all the other families that he affected indirectly or directly? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And how much of that is actually gonna catch up to him and haunt him and say like, the second to last or even last episode? You know what I mean? How much is he gonna be able to pretend like none of that happened? And it's gonna be really interesting to see how they contrast that with this happy new character. Tell me some reason why. For some reason, I thought it was gonna be like his daughter. There was gonna be some sort of blood relation. This looks like just some rando chick.
In the comics, her name is Kate Bishop, and
Mhm.
she's I think she ends up taking on the persona of Hawkeye at some point.
At some point, yeah, don't they all?
If not, she's like his
Like sidekick to
yeah,
start.
like his Robin.
Right.
yeah.
I feel like it's very obvious, but I mean, I've heard murmurs, and I definitely feel like we're building a young enough roster to build up to a young Avengers for sure.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're going that way.
Definitely feels that way, and I'm excited for it. It's really promising.
Yeah.
The comedy's on point. Spectacles there. I love how they teased the Captain America
Yeah,
musical
Rogers
at the beginning and Rogers musical, and then they committed to it. Like we saw like a whole dance number. I was
Yeah,
like,
I'm
what?
just thinking if I'm interested to see if like there's a big action set piece in that, or if,
That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
I hope they do something like that because I'm like, what? That's hilarious. There's there's a lot of nuggets in there. Do we know anything about the big bad in this one? Or is it you think it's people from his past, or is it like some big organization they have to take down?
yeah, I don't know. We saw that glimpse of Vera Farmiga
Yes.
in there. She's from The Conjuring.
Correct. Yes.
I'm not sure how or like who her character is.
Right.
But yeah,
I wonder how big and important that character will be to Hawkeye's story.
yeah,
Because is it going to be more of like a ragtag group of people, like he kind of like villain of the week type beat, or is it one overarching organization? I think Marvel might stray for that because it's bigger, it's building towards that.
yeah,
But it's really interesting to see that. I'm interested in seeing, if it's how much of his past is going to come to haunt him. His bottom line is what I'm trying to get at here.
right.
You know what I mean? And then all while showing, a new young generation, a new younger person, the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
There's an arrow more dangerous than that. I was like, true. So, really good trailer. I'm hyped for it. How many episodes do you think they're putting out? I haven't looked.
Oh, I wonder. What is What If?
What if? I think it's only 8.
Only 8?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of limited series. They're probably.
Yeah.
I think most episode orders. I think WandaVision has been the longest so far at 9 episodes. I want to say.
Oh,
I don't
was it
think.
9?
I think it was 9 or 10.
9 or 10, right?
And I don't think they're gonna go over 10 personally.
Probably not.
Because I think they treat these like really like mini series. So I think minimum 6, maximum probably 8 or 9.
Yeah.
That's my guess, but we'll see. But yeah, overall solid trailer. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, it's moving on to our tier lists. You ready for that, Big Apple?
Yep.
Let's get it going. All right, and we're back from break. Now we're gonna get into it. Marvel has released officially 25 films to date, including Shang-Chi.
Yep.
We're gonna do our little tier list as of right now. These are kind of fluid to me, but I just had to settle on an order for today, and I have my reasons. I'm sure you have yours. And we're gonna get into it, starting with the D tier, Big Apple. I'm gonna list a couple of them. Thor 1 and Thor 2 are in here for me.
Okay.
And are they in your D category?
Thor 2 is.
Of course. I feel like Thor 2 is pretty universally like womp womp.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It didn't do great.
It was weird. It was weird. The villain Malekith was like meh. He wanted what? I don't even remember his motives. And the whole movie was just gray and dumb and stupid. And we were coming out of that weird, like Shakespearean space opera with Thor into like the new direction we eventually get with Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to like Thor. I liked him conceptually, but in the movies I don't know, they took him too seriously to start, and like this was like a really turning that up to 11 in Thor 2.
Yeah,
for
I
me,
get you.
it was just weird.
Yeah.
I don't know, forgettable too. Your thoughts on that movie?
Yeah, there's no real like good action scenes or anything.
No.
And, the way they brought in what was it, Natalie Portman's character?
Yeah.
Jane.
Of course.
It was kind of like it wasn't very inspired.
Yeah, it was just kind of like meh.
Yeah, there wasn't much to it.
Her being the ether at one point.
Right.
I was like, what?
And that's
like,
how they brought her back.
I was like, what? Huh? It was just weird to me. Thor 1's only on this list right now because like, while it was slightly better than Thor 2, it was just kind of forgettable aside from like the Destroyer and like maybe wasn't like Coulson in it. We got that whole sequence right with like we got an introduction to Hawkeye. At least that was more memorable, but it was still pretty forgettable to me too. What else you got in your D tier?
D tier, I have Iron Man 2 and Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. I'm gonna gloss over that pretty quickly. It didn't do it for me. This weird like 90s reference like Lost. I don't know what my history is. Dreams. Like that's such a messy way to introduce a character.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Like if you want to do that, I don't know, with a lesser character or I don't know, someone who people seem to know, maybe they don't know themselves. Like let's pretend they wanted to do a bold creative direction with like let's say this would never happen, but let's say Superman. Everybody knows Superman's origin.
Right.
If they wanted to do a new take on his origin and make him be all like lost and he's actually doing something else and like, whoa, like that's not really his origin, but that's an interesting take. Because at least we have some sort of like anchor. General audiences have like an anchor into like what it should be or what we feel about it.
Right.
But I didn't know anything about Captain Marvel. I didn't read any of the comics. So like none of this came off as likable. It was confusing. It was messy. Things were forced. I mean, the 90s aesthetic was cool. It was nice seeing a de-aged Fury and stuff and like how he lost his eye, which was also kind of disappointing to me.
Yeah. That was definitely one of the bigger disappointments.
That was a huge letdown.
Was how they tied in how you got the eye patch.
I was like, seriously? A cat? Like a space cat? Whatever.
Yeah, you're kind of bringing down the character of Nick Fury.
Yeah. Anytime you take away a character's mystique, I think that's why a lot of people really enjoyed like Rick from Rick and Morty because like no one really knew his origin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anytime you kind of take that away, if it doesn't meet someone's expectations, it definitely degrades the character as a whole. In that instance, I feel like Rick's backstory kind of justified everything he did, or you know, at least explained it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, jumping back to this universe, like I was like, a cat scratching your eye, dude. Like I thought it was like some cool battle.
I mean,
like,
it's
some
an alien cat.
Yeah, it's an alien cat, but was it an alien when it did it?
Right.
It was like a little kitty. It wasn't that cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it was cool though that it was an alien. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, I think the weirdest part of Captain Marvel was that it made you feel like, who was it? The Skrull were the villains.
Yeah.
And then it kind of turned that, and that's something that wasn't really in the comics either.
You're playing with our expectations. You're
you're
subverting
it was
them.
Almost like Iron Man 3 in that way.
Yeah. And that's another thing that messed with me because I'm like, wait, aren't they supposed to be the villains? Or wasn't there a whole Skrull war? I don't know. Anyway.
And obviously it creates some gray area, but
which is true
for further storytelling. But in this story, it didn't really pan out as well as they thought it could.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. We need more context. We need to see more.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like with any race or whatever, any like aliens, whatever, any people, there's always gray. It's not everybody's completely one thing. So I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
But you know, we're led to believe one thing, and then we see another, and we're like, okay, where's this going though? You know what I mean? And that's just the biggest gripe I have with it as well. Incredible Hulk is on my D list, my D tier, because I'm like, why is this even MCU to begin with? Like I know it was the early days. It was literally like the second movie I think Marvel put out, or did it come out before?
No,
Iron Man?
no, it was the third. The third. It was at the same time as Iron Man 2.
Okay, you're right. It was like within a few, like at least half a year or something, right?
I think so.
Something like that, within a year or half a year. Whatever. It didn't do it for me. I know there's a whole drama with Edward Norton.
Yeah.
I'm over it. It happens, right? That was the whole phase one. It was like the the growing pains, like how we got a replacement for Brody, from what was it, Terrence Howard,
yeah,
something like that, right?
Yeah, Terrence Howard.
I think that's his name. I could be wrong. Whatever.
Sounds about right.
It sounds right enough. He's a great actor. Don't get me wrong. It didn't work out. So then we got Don Cheadle, who I like as Brody.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. He also adds charisma. We were talking
about how Mark
Ruffalo adds a little more charisma than Edward Norton.
Of course, yeah. They're definitely very they're charismatic in their roles, and they bring more to their characters in that way, I feel. So for sure. I think I was in a mood when I made this, but I have Ant-Man and the Wasp on my D tier.
Okay.
I think that's a little harsh in hindsight, but I don't know. It didn't do as much for me as Ant-Man 1 did.
Yeah.
It was a continuation, sure, but nothing riveting or groundbreaking, in my opinion.
I feel like the family story could have been stronger.
Right. Lean into it more.
The villain wasn't as memorable. It was different, and I enjoyed it for that, but it wasn't
I forgot about the villain.
super.
I forgot that movie had a villain, is my point.
Yeah, it was Lawrence Fishburne.
It was? I thought it was the ghost girl.
Kind of.
I thought it was the ghost girl.
Yeah, he was helping her out.
Right.
He was creating the armor that was stabilizing the whole thing.
Conceptually, it was cool. Conceptually.
Yeah.
But the execution, I was just like, what am I watching? I feel like, I don't know. It was forgettable to me. And it's sad because Paul Rudd is a great actor. And and he's very charismatic. But like this, he is carrying that franchise. Because I'm like, I don't care. Like, granted, there is great supporting cast and all that's great and all. It's just the story needs to be tightened up or made more interesting or, I don't know, more impactful. I think that a stronger family story would have benefited it.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. I don't want to pass up your D list. What's on yours right now?
All right. Well, other than that, it would be Iron Man 2.
Talk to me about Iron Man 2. Why is it so far down?
Man,
don't get me started.
Well, first of all, the villain isn't. I like that he was tied back to Tony's past.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, apparently they all were, right?
I think someone sold Thanos the wrong guns a few thousand years ago. Must have been Stark's ancestor. No, go ahead.
Yeah. But they didn't really expand on his character, like
other than he was bad and he's been smited by Tony at one point or whatever.
His bird.
His bird. I want my bird. I want my bird. Hammer was a lovingly like hateful. I love to hate him is what I'm trying to say. I loved hating Justin Hammer. Great role, great character. I love the unlikable, even more unlikable asshole, evil Tony Stark. Or evil. I don't know, just greedy is really what it was. Like, I'm going to make it better, cheaper, knockoff. That was tight. I love that.
Yeah, that was good. The action sequences weren't that great either.
When I say sequences, I mean suit-up sequences. Like the suitcase thing was tight.
Yeah, definitely
the whips
with the suitcase.
Cutting the suitcase suit was tight. That blew my mind back when I saw that the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, it's like Transformers, but better. And also, I wasn't a huge fan of the whips, but I like how they used it. They made it work on that little Monaco race. Mm-hmm. They made that work.
Yeah,
it wasn't,
I thought that was
but
I
loved
better
it.
one.
It was that was a better highlight of the movie for me. Mm-hmm. Great use of slow mo, very dramatic. I loved it, and I love how despite all that, and like Happy's driving, I think Pepper's in the back too, and he's still throwing quips out like while they're about to get like sliced by electric whips.
Yeah,
it's like let's go. So that was enjoyable. But I could see why you would put it at though.
Yeah, the finale it was what I was getting at.
Yeah.
That was like the cheapest fight scene out of all.
It was pretty generic. It was just like
like all the drones. Like it was cool in the trailer seeing it. But
yeah, it was. Yeah.
It felt like the consequences kind of left the film at that point, and they were just kind of
going off
cannon fodder.
Yeah, I mean, weren't they? They weren't piloted, right? They were just drones.
Yeah, they were just drones.
Marvel loves that, and who can blame them? If they don't have souls and they're not humans, by all means, robots, drones, whatever. There's not real people. Can't see that.
Wizards.
Wizards, right? Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I guess we should move on to C tier. Let me make sure. I'm gonna hit this right off the bat by saying Black Widow. That made it this low for me, and I know there was a lot going against. You agree? You do the same thing? It was a lot going against this movie in terms of production. We had the whole, COVID pushed it back a whole year, and then other drama, and then keep pushing it back, and then the whole Disney streaming thing, and that has nothing to do with the actual movie, but it had everything to do with expectations and hype. I mean,
yeah,
we waited this long and this long, this long. Everyone's hungry for new Marvel content, and sure, we got Disney Plus shows and stuff, but we didn't get anything remotely close to a movie. We want the big spectacle of a movie, and while this movie did have spectacle and it had some humor, to me it felt kind of like disjointed and all over the place. And in some ways that works because maybe that is her backstory, and as we see, that is like she comes from a pretty broken home, if you can call it that. It's all forced.
yeah.
But it just felt like too little too late. I feel like this movie should have happened when it happened in the MCU's timeline. You know what I mean?
It also felt overly concerned with setting up Yelena
Yeah.
rather than focusing on
Black Widow's origin.
Black Widow's origin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was less of an origin movie, more of like a origin for Yelena. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And like, well, this is and it does a good job of setting her up, and she was really likable, with the vest puns and all that. And
Yeah.
it was cool, but it felt like it was really like Black Widow was overshadowed in her own movie. Even the
Mhm.
villain, he was smelly. Like, come on, like it was so cartoony, mustache twirling.
Yeah.
That's not an interesting villain. I don't even remember his
Yeah,
name.
he also wasn't interesting. Just like he didn't have that
Like what, commanding presence? Or
that presence that
like he's
all
actually a
these other
threat.
villains have had.
Yeah, he's like
even like Shang-Chi, his dad being the villain of
that's a
that.
presence to be reckoned
That's a
with.
presence.
Yeah,
But
this
I
villain
didn't
was
feel
like
any presence from this.
he's just a glorified human
Yeah.
trafficker. That's what he
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
He's,
essentially.
he's like, I'm a big bad, like
He has
oh,
a
God.
floating fortress.
Yeah,
or
that no
something.
one knew about.
Apparently,
Dude, I love
Like, how does
how many secret organizations there are
Right.
in Marvel.
like
Everyone's
Nick
in-
Fury should have known about.
You think?
Right.
He's like, it's just the universe is getting a little too big and complicated for its own good, which depending on how you handle that, could be a good or bad thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I agree. That belongs in the sea.
Yeah,
Ant-Man,
for me,
go
I
ahead.
had Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Yeah.
C tier.
C tier. What else you got?
I also had both the first and second Avengers.
Wow. I had
C
definitely had
tier.
the second Avengers there.
Yeah.
I had the second Avengers there, and let me tell you why. I have such a love-hate relationship with that movie because at the time, the hype was. Do you remember the trailer? There are no
Yeah,
strings
yeah.
on me. Oh
It
my
was a
god,
good
hype!
trailer.
That was like a
Yeah.
really solid trailer. I was really hype. I was like, dude, they're
Yeah.
gonna do it again. Avengers 1 at that time for me was like everything. I was like, this was crazy. It was so pivotal and transformative for me as a youth. And then Avengers 2 comes and it does its job at setting up more, like particularly with Vision. That was a great sequence. The birth of Vision was great.
Yeah.
We get a little more about the characters and Tony's neurosis, and like he's like, I want to build a pseudo armor around the world. All the stuff that leads up to Civil War, which is fantastic. It's all laid here, or a lot of it is.
Mhm.
And this movie's a really good setup movie. Is my issue with it. Like it was cool. Ultron, like it wasn't an Age of Ultron. It was like a couple days, and then they beat
Right,
him.
like a week.
A week
most.
at tops. You know
right?
what I mean? It wasn't an Age of Ultron. It was like
Yeah.
it was like a small vacation of Ultron. It was hardly anything.
Yeah.
And the ramifications were larger than the story, which was nice, unlike Black Widow or something like that.
Mhm.
Whereas like Sokovia was messed up even more, and like I think they wrecked some place in Africa too. Like
Right.
it-
In Civil War.
so all these things leading to these reforms that lead up to Civil War, like we talk
Mhm.
about. That's great and all. The movie itself was like meh. Like there were some cool sequences and cool little moments and tidbits, but as
Yeah.
a standalone, it was like Like,
Yeah,
something
I
was
think
missing.
I think what it was probably they didn't build Ultron that well. you know?
Right.
Like he was very rushed.
Well, isn't he originally a
Story-wise.
Hank Pym creation
Yeah, he was, and then they kind of retrofitted him
to work in this universe?
Yeah, to
which,
work with Tony.
Whatever, they worked with what they worked with.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just feel like he's more. I like Ultron as a character better, like in the animated, like Marvel's Avengers series, Earth Mightiest Heroes, or whatever.
yeah.
That was a much
good.
better take on it, and I felt it was more compelling.
Mhm.
This one is just like they needed a villain, but not too big of a villain. Like, I'll just do Ultron,
Right.
whatever. You know what I mean? And then what happened. So
Yeah.
I have Captain America 1 on there, which seems a little harsh, but aside from like the
Okay.
big beats, it's not something I'm itching to go back and rewatch. It was good for the time.
Yeah.
But now it's like I don't. Another thing I should say, a disclaimer about these rankings is a lot of this has to do with the rewatchability for me too.
Mm.
And like, do I want to go back and revisit these? Like, because they had their place. Each of them had their place. When they came out, and what they did for the universe.
Yeah.
And that's fine and all. But like, am I itching to go back and see it? Not really. And that's why some of these are ranked kind of low, even though as movies they were solid. I mean, I enjoyed the first Avenger.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, what are you feeling?
Yeah,
about his
I
origin?
have that a tier above
Above?
yours. I
Yeah.
have it at B.
Right.
For me, it's almost like Marvel's quintessential superhero movie.
Right. He's the
Um,
Boy Scout, isn't he?
yeah,
So
he's the first Avenger. He's like your classic sort of superhero. He gets the serum and whatnot, and eventually has. Sorry, I lost my point.
you know, I mean, I
Um,
can pick up on it. It's basically
yeah.
like he's supposed to be a force for good and pure good. You know,
Right.
akin to like, I mean, like what Superman might be. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
That's kind of like what they were going for.
Yeah, and so for me that's what really worked and actually gives it some rewatchability for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm gonna finish up my C tier here. We talked about Ultron, Captain America 2, or Captain America 1 rather. I have Iron Man 2 on my C tier, most of the same reasons you have, which wasn't that great. I don't want to rewatch it. I mean, it was all right, whatever.
Yeah.
We talked about Ant-Man. I have Black Panther on C tier, and not because it
Okay.
was horrible or anything. I don't have an eager urge to rewatch it. Like it did what it did, but I feel like most of the important setup happened in Civil War because that's when we first saw him, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And while the concept of Wakanda is super interesting, and I want to see more, this being like the origin movie, I can't say anything else without spoiling it because you haven't seen the next episode of What If. But I think this movie was done better. Okay, so anyway, I mean, my biggest gripe with it was like the last act was a little messy. It kind of suffered from what Shang-Chi suffered from, like the whole CGI fest. It's just two of the same people fighting each other, and that happens a lot. That's a big trope here.
Right.
You know, it did great things for the culture. There was some stunning visuals. I got a lot of Lion King vibes from it. So I'm like, I feel like I kind of seen it before. You know what I mean? With just different clothes on.
Yeah, I get you.
Not beat for beat, but for some of the tropes. I'm like, okay, heavily influenced. But I'm not gonna sit here and like praise it as the best Marvel movie ever because it's good. It's like middle tier for me. So I have it on C. And I don't have a desire to rewatch it anytime soon. But that's just where it is for me. But solid acting, solid visuals. It's more modern, and I love that for it. So it's more B for me than it is C, but I just ended up there. So, but yeah, go ahead. Anything else left in your C category?
For C category, I didn't touch on the Avengers. So
the first one, yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the first one.
C.
I just feel like rewatching it feels corny.
Yeah, I mean it is.
Yeah,
it is corny.
The costuming, the storyline. I don't know. It just feels like over
the top,
over well paced. I don't know. It just feels like I know what's coming. I don't know. I've just rewatched it
so
too
many
much.
times. Yeah, it might be it.
Yeah,
you have it all memorized.
I really don't know, but yeah.
I think some of that because I actually have it on a really higher tier, but now in hindsight, I think, and again, my rankings not like I need to be more consistent the next time we do this. But I actually haven't rewatched it in a while, but it has such a special place in my heart because it was the first time anything like that had been tried, and so because it kind of birthed like everything else that came to pass, I see it as kind of like paying my respects to value it so highly. But as a movie, like standalone, it still works for the most part. Like you don't necessarily have to see all of Phase 1 to like Avengers. And I think that aided in its quest to be like really good when it first came out. I don't think it broke $1 billion, but I think it did pretty well for itself. Did it?
I think it hit $1 billion.
It probably did, right?
Yeah.
Was it the first Marvel movie to do that?
I think so.
That makes sense. Yeah, if any movie was going to do it at that time, it would be this one.
Right.
There you go. So anyway, I have a high regard with it. It because it's like all the sentimental stuff surrounding it. You know what I mean? And what it did.
Yeah, and if this movie didn't work, then we wouldn't have the rest of the MCU.
Exactly. I think that's why I regard it so highly. But we'll get back to that when we come back to that.
Yeah,
that's interesting though. Yeah. You're pretty objective about it. Me, it's less about the movie and more about what it represents.
Right.
You know? Let's go to the B category real quick. And
okay.
I have Iron Man 1 there. And it's so funny because for the same reasons why Avengers 1 was so high up for me on my tier list, Iron Man 3 is so mid here, even though like by my logic I should regard it higher. And because that was the birth of everything else. Like that really was the origin. And as a standalone movie, you could go back and rewatch it and enjoy every bit of it. And for the time, it was really good, I felt. And it's still good. You know, like it captures a slice of that that Middle Eastern conflict we just got out of recently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we can even call it that. But it captures that 2008 time period so well.
Yeah, it does.
And it's most it balances the most realism with the most like that Marvel quippiness, corniness that we come to learn and appreciate.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if you've noticed, but they've sort of had like this flow of throughout their films where it's gone from like kind of realistic, and then they get a little like less serious, or and more comedic.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've kind of mixed it, I think, best now.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to Iron Man, that's when I've noticed like the biggest contrast in their tone overall.
Yeah, no, I agree, because like you kind of had to start from a grounded, realistic place, and that's exactly what this movie did. You know what I mean? And then they took you above and beyond with the surrealism and all that. But well, with the fantasy, whatever. But yeah, the ebb and flow with the tones and what they're going for, I agree. And I don't know. I think that's just a good spot for it to live for me. It's funny because right next to it, I have Spider-Man. I believe this is what, Homecoming. Was that the first one we got from the trilogy?
Yeah, that was the first one.
I think it's a really good Spider-Man movie. It's not like my favorite ever, because I feel like the overarching Tony Stark Iron Man stuff kind of takes away a little bit.
Okay.
Like it adds to this character because he's integral to this to this Peter Parker's storyline.
Right.
But even though he was only in the movie for like what, I don't know, a couple scenes.
Yeah,
I feel
maybe
like
20 minutes.
It was more like
40.
I don't know, it felt like a Spider-Man like 1.0 or like, you know, like 1.5. Like I don't know, it wasn't quite there. Or like half Spider-Man, half you know what I'm trying to get at here?
Yeah,
it felt more of like a, I don't know, less of an origin story, more of like this is what I'm doing. Like this is my new start.
Right.
But he was still Spider-Man before this. He was just like a ragtag.
Yeah, wasn't it
like we
like
missed
6
his
months
origin
or
movie,
something?
you know what I mean? Because we
back
did.
in Civil War.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Civil War was more of his, closer to his origins. So it was okay. It did what it had to do. Vulture was great villain. It's rewatchable. That's why it's higher up on this list for me. I can go back and rewatch it, no problem.
Yeah.
But you know, it was just like, oh, it was okay. You know, like I love Spider-Man. I love him a lot, but I'm not itching to go back and rewatch it per se. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me actually, it felt a lot. So I put it on my A tier.
Yeah.
It felt a lot more like Spider-Man to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I grew up with the animated Spider-Man.
Yeah.
On I think it was like Disney
XD or
something like that.
Yeah.
They
was
had
it the one
reruns.
with Drake Bell, or was it?
No. The man, I can't remember the actor's name. He's specific to the Spider-Man in that show, and he does a bunch of character voice.
I forget the name,
work.
but I know what you're going for. I know what you're trying to say.
But yeah. So Tom Holland's Spider-Man, one, he looked more age appropriate.
That's true.
He felt more like a kid, and he had that
Also
energy for him. And I think that's what worked best.
Yeah, I'm definitely not knocking the movie.
Yeah.
I do like his portrayal of Spider-Man the best.
Yeah.
I just thought that it was just interesting seeing him at this point in his life with this many influences. Because I'm biased because I grew up like watching reruns of the '90s animated Spider-Man, and as well as the of course the Raimi Spider-Mans, and like that was pretty self-contained. You couldn't just call up Iron Man in the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. You know what I mean? Like he had to figure it all out for himself. I think that's what it didn't necessarily detract, but I was like, oh, okay, like, well, I want to see him like struggle and be on his own. But it's wonderful. It's a blessing and a curse because like now he lives in a shared universe like he does in the comics. So like now we get to see how all that develops, and we will see it in was it No Way Home?
Yeah, No Way Home.
And all the in winter or whatever when we see it. So I'm coming around to it is what you'll see here on this tier list.
Yeah.
Coming around to it. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is also my B list, and Volume 2 just straight up wasn't as good as Volume 1, but it was still good.
I felt like this family story actually is what helped it, and I have it on my B tier as well. I thought the ego story, him and the relationship between him and Peter.
Yeah,
I think that worked.
Definitely the driving force of the movie. It did wonders to move the plot along, and I think it ended the way it should have in terms of like them having to bump heads about the truth about his mom.
Right. Yeah, I love that scene where he realizes that his dad killed his mom.
It was powerful stuff.
It's just like,
and that goes
taking it back, and his eyes,
the dolly zoom,
the eyes
of the galaxy coming back to normal. Yeah, that was good stuff. So yeah, definitely on my B tier for that.
Yeah.
But now we get to move into the exciting ones. Big Apple, you ready for that? You ready for A tier?
Yeah. Well, actually, I got a couple more.
What you got? Tell me.
So B tier is actually my heaviest category. So I got I'll just list them off real quick.
Let's do it.
Doctor Strange, Guardians 2, Ant-Man, Thor Ragnarok, The Incredible Hulk,
Really?
Black Panther and Captain America: First Avenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a few of those I want to talk about. Let me see this B tier real quick. I want you to talk to me about
Okay.
why Ragnarok's in your B tier. Talk to me about it.
B tier. This might be a case where I've watched it too many times. So I do know like the action beats pretty well. But also it does feel like it's kind of in that weird pocket of the universe where it's a little awkward
between comedy and drama.
No. The characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like looking at the world of Sakaar.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at the rest of the MCU,
there's a disconnect.
It's not that it doesn't like fit, but it's a little more, not my speed, I guess.
Gotcha.
In terms of like,
not your cup of tea, huh?
Yeah.
You hate Jack Kirby.
I'm kidding. No, because I'm definitely looking forward to Eternals. Oh, that looks spectacular.
Yeah. That does look good.
But
continue.
But yeah, I don't know. It felt kind of like a sideshow.
I can see how you feel that way. I have a different opinion on it, but I can see why you would say that. Yeah. So that's interesting.
I definitely loved seeing the Hulk more and seeing his interactions with Thor
for sure,
specifically.
Yeah, I feel like we could have gotten a mini series of what he was up to. Yeah, easily on Sakaar. That would have been trippy. Let's talk about why do you feel that way about Doctor Strange B tier?
So this is actually like high for me. I think like a lot of people would rank this movie a little bit lower.
Really? Okay. Let's hear why. Let's hear why it's
higher.
But
for me, it's higher just because I enjoyed the difference in how he handled Dormammu.
Right.
The way he defeated him.
Mm-hmm.
And his overall story, how he was very arrogant at the beginning, much like Tony Stark. And then sort of got over that and realized his true potential.
Right.
After suffering the accident that he had.
Yeah, of course. I have it like it's on my 8 tier, but it's like a little on the lower end. So yeah, basically where yours is.
Yeah.
And for most of the same reasons, I thought it was a different take, and I really liked getting into the whole realm of magic and like just the whole conceptual everything that comes with it. And I love anything that messes with like, getting into other dimensions and stuff like that. And this is kind of our foray, I think is the word, into all that. It's like here's your introduction, like this is like what's in the universe, not just like across the galaxy and some stars, like no, like different dimensions, like otherworldly beings, like. So I like that we're getting into the fantastic and all of that. And then the visuals super trippy, like remind me of Inception and all that.
Yeah.
All those visuals are just great, and I love everything that came with like the time stone and all that trippiness. So
yeah, I love the design of it all. How they took the Jack Kirby illustrations and really figured out how they would work in real life.
Right, exactly. Their interpretation of it was really solid, and eagerly waiting on Doctor Strange too. Let's see if anything else. I mean, I guess that's everything else is pretty self-explanatory for B tier. Unless there's anything else you want to jump on about any other explanations.
I thought I could think of.
Well, let's go to A tier. Go to A tier. One that we can agree on, I can see right now, is definitely Endgame, and my reasons are, it's so high up because again, what it did, everything built to it. You know what I mean? This was literally Endgame, right? So everything built to it. There's a lot of payoff in it, a lot of fan service, a lot of epic moments no one's gonna forget, right? That's all there. That's well and good. It's less rewatchable because it's a really long movie, but you could still do it if you're really in the mood for it. There's a lot of good clips, and more importantly, there's a lot of character moments in it. The Russos, man, I cannot applaud them enough. They took, what was it, like 50, 60 characters and all gave them like a little bit of something. You know what I mean? Of course, we have like our core cast, like probably the original 6 and some ancillary ones. But man, everyone got their little moments. Everyone had some growth. People changed, and everyone's storylines got continued. It was the most coherent, huge, splash page of comic book characters, and they all had something to do. So I mean, that was really solid. So it's just on my 8 tier for that reason. What are yours?
For Endgame?
Yeah, why not? We're on the topic.
Yeah. So pretty much what you said. I think the reason why it wouldn't be S tier would probably be because of the fan service.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also the 3-hour
time
length.
Yeah. It's a bit beefy.
Yeah.
Bit beefy, big. Yeah. Any other thoughts on it?
No, no. I mean, that's about it. It's just that, like, the fan service, while like I enjoyed it and everything, it does kind of take away from,
Like a really concise,
yeah, concise, quick
yeah,
story.
and yeah, it's understandable.
format.
That's why it's there. So
Yeah.
we get that. Moving on, I have I think I ranked it higher than you. Maybe I did.
Did you?
I wanted to talk about Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Where's yours at? Oh,
I have it
snap,
as
crackle,
S
and
tier.
pop. You have it S tier. We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll come back to that then.
Okay.
I have Homecoming. Okay, looks like you, or is that Far From Home? Far From Home. Sorry.
Okay.
I have Far From Home on A tier, and looks like you have that too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick. That one did more for me. With Peter Parker's character, because it's not like don't get me wrong, Homecoming wasn't bad or anything, right? But it did more for me in that, like, first of all, I've never seen him outside of New York. I feel like,
Yeah. Yeah.
period,
That's true.
point blank, period. I don't think I've ever seen Spider-Man just chilling, going global with it. It was funny seeing him hop through Europe and all the shenanigans he got into, and Mysterio. I really loved Jake Gyllenhaal's performance as Mysterio.
Oh yeah.
And,
yeah. He was great.
I have a feeling he's not dead. I do, but I could be wrong. And it did everything to progress everyone's storylines and give him some growth, because he was stretched. He was stretched more. Peter had to go through more. I mean, he had that really rough moment where he got his world knocked out of him during that crazy sequence, and he gets hit by a train.
Oh right.
And he has
yeah.
to get picked up by Happy, and he's freaking
Yeah.
out, and he's rattled. You could tell. And I really love it when they push Spider-Man, when they push Peter Parker to that edge, that limit, because that's where growth happens, and we see him fail or try and succeed. So this movie really did it for me. That's why it's high up for me. What about you, Big Apple?
Yeah. Yeah. I loved his story. How he was questioning, can I live up to the expectations of being essentially like the next Iron Man
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
yeah. He was almost groomed for that, is what it felt like throughout
Yeah,
the course of
yeah.
these movies.
Right. Him getting the glasses. What was it?
Edith.
Edith.
Yeah, and being able to launch orbital nukes or
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, what the fuck?
Like that's
like-
intense.
That's
That's a lot.
it's a lot on your shoulders, man. Just a
Yeah,
little.
especially for a kid.
Yeah, for real.
And then
So-
yeah, him questioning that and then giving it up to Mysterio. I thought
that was crazy.
That was good.
But he did what he felt was right in the moment,
Exactly.
and that is what made a good character moment for me. I was like, man,
Mhm.
even though we as the audience know he's bad, Peter is trying to do the right thing, and
Mhm.
I can't fault him for that. He just put his trust in the wrong person. A solid movie. It's definitely A tier for me.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy 1 happens to be up here for me. Is that for you, or is it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Okay, cool. I really liked that introduction into the cosmic side of the MCU.
Mhm.
That did it for me. I like seeing a ragtag group, kind of just haphazardly formed, and all of their differences, and
Yeah.
how they had to kind of it was kind of a choose your own family thing. You know what I mean? I loved everything. I loved big adult Groot and the Prison Break, hijinks and
Yeah.
Drax. I loved all of it. It all worked for me.
The soundtrack.
The soundtrack
was great.
amazing. How
Yeah.
could I go this long without talking about it? I totally forgot. Yeah, it's so rewatchable. It's just, it's like a bop through and through. And it was just fantastic. Visuals are great. Story was great. Everyone worked, and they do a good job of building up the bigger connection with Thanos and Gamora and all that, and of
Mhm.
course Nebula.
Right.
And just all that works. It does everything to further I think it was a phase 3, 2,
It was
2, end of phase 2, beginning of phase 3 movie,
2.
right?
Yeah, it was 2.
End of phase 2.
Yeah, it was after
It was after the Winter Soldier. I have the list.
Thor Ragnarok.
No, I have the first one. The first Guardians of the Galaxy is 2014, and it's
okay.
it's August 1st, 2014, and it came out later that year, because the Winter Soldier was April 4th, 2014. So,
Right,
but
yeah,
definitely phase
yeah.
2. Yeah. It did it for me, and it got us excited for the big cosmic world that was waiting for
Mhm.
us in the MCU. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I love the visuals from James Gunn, what he
Mhm.
brought.
Yeah. He is spectacular with those sequences.
Yeah.
He was really good with that.
Yeah. Man, I mean, it makes it all the more better that now he has Suicide Squad
For real.
under his belt too.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine double dipping like that.
Right?
He's got a little ship going at Marvel. He's got a ship going at DC. It's
Yeah.
crazy. The guy loves comics. I can't fault him. He's a great filmmaker.
Yep.
I have Doctor Strange up here. We already talked about it. I just regarded it a little higher in the moment when I made this.
Mm.
What's left for your A tier? What else we got here? Civil War.
Civil War.
Yeah, we can get into it, because
Yeah.
that's actually on my S tier. That's
Yeah,
bleeding
yeah.
into my S tier.
For a while, it was probably on my. It would be on my S tier.
Mhm.
But for me, it didn't feel. It felt as big as it could be for the MCU
At the time,
at the time.
Fair enough.
But not big enough in terms of like what the Civil War story was like in the comics.
correct. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like they had the whole slew of characters
yeah,
in
like
that.
all of them.
And yeah,
basically.
they couldn't do that here.
Right.
But I don't know, the conflict was great,
Yes.
and the visuals, getting to see like Giant Man
Yes.
for the first time.
See, and that took it away from
Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything you're saying, yes to, because that's another reason why Ant-Man and the Wasp was ranked so low for me, because they did like Giant Man again there, and it didn't have any impact because we saw it in Civil War, and I was
Right, right.
well, okay, cool, he did it again. But Civil War had so much. The reason why it's S tier for me is like, well, in terms of scope, it isn't the biggest story. It's not like Infinity War or anything like that.
Mhm.
For that moment in the MCU, like you said, it was the biggest thing then. And
Yeah.
what's bigger than any physical stakes, the emotional stakes, and of course, like the political fallout was huge. I mean, everything the MCU had been doing in terms of like these U.S. operatives, choosing to go wherever they want, and superhero it up in any country they feel like, and without any regard for collateral damage.
Mhm.
All of that came to a head here, and people had to pick sides, and it was all very convincing. You understood Tony's guilt and the
Yeah.
fun that he set up, and you understood, Captain America's, like, I don't know, his just like sense of righteousness, and like, I don't want to be like a government puppet. I want to do the right
Right.
thing because it's the right thing.
Yeah, I love that they had kind of turned from their first
Yeah.
stories,
Yeah, the first conflict
and
the
they
first
sort
Avengers,
of switched their roles.
yeah,
By the time they got to Civil
but
War.
for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that crazy how like
Yeah.
the Boy Scout became jaded with his own government,
Mhm.
and the billionaire by the book like guy who just didn't want to answer to anyone is now like in his own guilt, is taking responsibility and wants to be
Right.
held accountable.
Yeah.
It was such a good twist of of like where they went as characters, and that's why it's an S tier for me, because we got to see the introduction of Black Panther,
Right.
the mystique behind that, the teased world. We got Spider-Man, we got Giant Man going boom. Like, it was just such a solid film for me, and that's why it's up there. It's like one of the better Avengers movies for me. But it's a Captain America film. So
Yeah,
there you go.
Right.
That's how you do it.
Avengers 2.5.
5 is what
Yeah.
it felt like, but it was solid.
Yeah.
I saw that fight sequence in IMAX. It was the first time they were toying around with those cameras,
Mm.
and when it's like airport scene, I was like,
Right.
it was crazy. What else do we have up there? We should get to. Did we talk Winter Soldier yet? I don't think we did.
No, we
Let's
haven't.
talk that, because that's on your S tier, and
Yeah.
it's definitely high up in my A tier. So let's talk about it. The Winter Soldier trailer and all, but the film's execution, it was like the closest thing to like a James Bond-esque spy thriller that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And it's when they took Captain America from being that campy Boy Scout whatever from the 40s to his descent into like no, this is the real world, and we need to figure out what's right and what's wrong, and the lines that blurred between that, and how his best friend Bucky's alive, but he's like an agent for, what was it, Hydra, or at the time?
Yeah, Hydra.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like just all the fallout that comes with that, and him trying to fight for the past, while looking toward the future, and it was just really good. I think it was the Russo's first movie in the MCU,
it was.
and it was solid. Fight sequence were amazing. Cap stayed true. We got introduction for Falcon, and I think what was it, Sharon Carter as well.
Right. Yeah.
All of that was it. It was all
first time.
solid. I mean, it was just a really well done film, and that's something I can go back and watch whenever and be like, yeah, I'm in the mood for this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, what did it for you about?
Yeah,
The
it's
Winter
very
Soldier?
genre.
Heavy. Like, it was very
heavy.
specific.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, no, this is like
Yeah, it was
spy
the-
thriller. You know
Yeah,
what I
it
mean?
was the coolest look at Captain America I think we've gotten,
Yeah.
and I think that's what kind of puts it up there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's probably second to Spider-Man for me in terms of favorite characters,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that they implemented him in our new world,
Mm.
bringing him over from the 40s, and how grounded he felt, and how they still kept his sorry, I'm losing.
No, you're good. Like, he has a sense of like justice and pride.
Yeah, like he stayed true to who he was regardless of
How the world around him changed.
how the
Yeah.
world around him changed, and I think that's what his motives worked best in that film. Like,
Yeah.
they showed it best.
It really highlighted what he was about and who he was during that film for sure. We can't forget the elevator fight scene. We can't forget, the highway fight scene with all the knife
Yeah.
work. I mean, all of that
Yeah.
was slick. So it's up there for a reason. You good? Real quick on time. Are you good?
No, yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
It was a scam. So
Scam
I'm
like
good.
it. All right, cool. No worries. You can cut that out, Damien. All right. Cool. That is what else we got here?
Oh well, in Infinity War.
Oh man,
I
is
don't
that our
think
last
we've
one? Well,
talked
hold
about
on.
that.
Before we get
I
to
haven't.
Infinity War, I haven't either.
Okay.
I want to touch up on Thor Ragnarok one last time. Mine happened to make
Alright.
it to S tier. Maybe it's a little bit too high of praise, but again, you're forgetting my factors here. Rewatchability. I could throw that thing
Right.
on, and I haven't overwatched it like you might have, but I think it does two things really well: standalone and tying into the end game to Infinity War. Infinity War, literally. I think isn't that the last film before Infinity War? Or like
Yeah, it is. The post-credit scene is
directly
what
ties
we open
into
with,
what
right?
we open with.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it does both super well, and you don't need to you don't have to watch everything else to like what's going on with Thor Ragnarok. I mean, you could appreciate it a lot more if you did, but you know my point.
Definitely.
Super rewatchable. A brand new, fresh direction under Taika Waititi. With this Thor, because Thor was, he was charming and kind of fun, but it took himself too seriously
Mhm.
before this movie. Now, granted, one of my gripes of the movie was that like, well, since all we knew was drama, and then all we got was comedy in this one, like we kind of skimmed over all of the dramatic beats. I mean, literally, doesn't his planet blow up in this movie? Doesn't
At
Asgard
least
blow
kind
up?
of like shrug it off.
And they make like a joke about it 2 seconds later. I'm like,
Yeah,
all right,
literally.
come on now, guys. Like that was my one gripe with it. But everything else, like it was just going. I love, smart or not smart, Hulk, like the developing Hulk and his like time
Mhm.
on what was it?
Sakaar.
Sakaar. There you go.
Yeah.
And one of Stanley's last cameos too. Sad, but
Right. Yeah.
but
Right.
it was really good. It was a big difference. Thor was coming into his own more. He's learning his abilities and his powers without the hammer.
Mhm.
And I really loved it, and it was just a really solid movie for me. But now it's time for the main event, Infinity War. Infinity War is up there. I mean, for a myriad of reasons, but mainly being that super rewatchable,
Mhm.
super tight, concise, fast pace, action.
Yeah,
and
all the way. through.
Thanos is like the protagonist of this movie. The villain is
Yeah.
the protagonist. That's crazy. And he wins at the end. And
Mhm.
like, dude, Marvel dropped this on us and then nothing for a year. No movies. So like everyone was going crazy, like how the hype machine was crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was a huge packed roster, and every character somehow got their due, and it didn't like forget magically what happened. It continued a continuity of everything that came before, all the fallout from Civil War, Tony having to call up Rogers, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean everything that came before, people having to put aside their differences literally for the greater good.
Mhm.
And like all of the stuff that came with that, us going to Wakanda, that huge ending fights, Thor getting his new Stormbreaker. Everything was just like it was fan service in the best possible way, but it didn't overshadow the plot. And we got a really good look at Thanos' motives.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And like why he was doing what he's doing. And we didn't necessarily agree with him, but at least the filmmakers took the time to make us understand why it is he's doing what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You can at least see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And-
I love the way that they told the story. They kind of took like the framework that Joss Whedon built
Mm-hmm.
and like even further. Like they made it even better.
Right.
With Infinity War.
Man.
Yeah.
It's a solid movie. It's through and through. It's just really good.
Yeah.
Did I miss it? Did we happen to mention Shang-Chi?
No, we haven't. We haven't gone over that.
Let me go over that real quick. I only forgot it because it wasn't in this tier maker because it's so new and the website
Right.
hasn't caught up. But Shang-Chi for me is it's a lower A or higher B class, and that's
Mhm.
only because I really, really, really enjoyed the movie. But it just like it kind of suffered from what Black Panther suffered from a little bit with the whole like final sequence. Kind of like it was so good. It was such an energetic it was the first time we've seen Marvel like really lean into and respect like the kung fu genre in terms of not only the culture and all that, but like actually staying like keeping the camera on the fight scene. I want to see the choreo, and it was badass. I forget names, and every little reviewer's talked about it, but I think one of the choreographers from Jackie Chan's films was on it.
Right. He was a student of his.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it showed. I mean, you could tell. I mean, the bus sequence alone was like one of my favorite, if not my favorite sequence from that movie.
Yeah.
And you could tell they put hella months into that. Like just so much work into it, and it pays off, man. It's so rewatchable, which is why it's high up on my tier list. And it sets up the world more, and we get callbacks and retroactive continuities, like with Trevor Slattery and Iron Man 3 and all that and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And I think you were saying earlier you really enjoyed how the Mandarin or the Mandarin, we'll say Wenwu. Was it Wenwu? Was his actual name?
Right.
You know,
I think
leader
so.
of the Ten Rings. Shang-Chi's dad or Shang-Chi's dad. He was actually a good villain. Like he was a villain. He was someone to be reckoned with, and we
Mhm.
still saw, even though we didn't understand it, we still saw where he was coming from. You know what I mean? In terms of like him losing his wife and thinking she can come back, and his motivations weren't mustache twirling. He was just a man who's hurting.
Right, right. He was
know?
essentially being manipulated by
Mhm.
the force behind the
Behind the wall, like that
ball.
that
Yeah.
ancient beast thing, demons,
Mhm.
whatever. Soul suckers as they call them.
Yeah.
Stunning visuals, fantastic direction, more tie-ins to the MCU. You know, with Wong and towards the end and all that. And
Yeah, Abomination.
exactly. You know, what's going on with that? Is it a Dark Avengers tie-in? What's going on there? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
What's going on with what's her name? Not Maria. Some fancy slip of the tongue
Val.
name. Val. We'll just call her Val.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Dreyfus's character, that lady.
Yeah.
You know, the next Dark Nick Fury. You know, what's going on with all that?
Essentially the
This
same
is what it feels like.
Yeah.
So, all that. So, I mean, solid movie. Pretty rewatchable. Not like mind blowing, but pretty good. And I'm excited to see what's to come. You know, there's a lot of lore they tease, like we talked about in our review.
Right.
What is it for you? What
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
ranking it?
The world building was what took me back. That like for me that it really surprised me how big the world was for Shang-Chi, and I like that that's what we got to see. It felt like a lot like Black Panther in that way, and I feel like this was sort of them trying their hand out again at what they tried to do with Iron Man 2, setting up the future.
Right.
And I feel like they looked at that and they did it a lot better here with
Yeah.
Shang-Chi. And yeah, it was a fun film, and I've only seen it once, so I don't know that I would keep it at my A tier, but for now, yeah, I think that's where it would land.
For sure. Yeah.
And I definitely would want to watch it a handful more times.
Yeah, I feel that one for sure. Yeah. Like I said, there's some things that work better and some not so much, but overall, it does an overwhelmingly better job than it doesn't. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah,
it does
yeah.
it for me. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's our tier list, and oh my god, we must be going in pretty long. It's the longest one we've had so far. But we'll wrap it up real quick after a small break with our quick review of Marvel's What If episode 5. It's gonna be pretty brief. I have some concise thoughts, and then I'm gonna let it go. All right, let's take a quick break.
Right.
And that was.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Cool. We haven't had a long episode.
Yeah, we have.
We need to find some news. I promise next week we'll start. I'm really excited to talk to you about the next week's What If, or this week's, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of words about that one. Real quick before we get back to it, do you have any I'm gonna go over briefly some moments that happen here. Off the top of your head, you can pull up the notes. It has like a synopsis, but do you have any strong opinions one way or another about it that you're ready to tap in about? You might feel some again after I start talking about it, but
Right. On certain scenes, no. Overall, yeah. Do you want?
no, you're good. I mean, you just follow my lead. If you feel free to jump in at any time,
Okay.
please, because
Sure.
I honestly, this one, it's been so long at this point where it's kind of falling out of my brain. And anyway,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that actually kind of goes into what I have to say. About
good.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. All right, and we're back from our final break, and we're gonna get into Marvel's What If episode 5, the zombies one. Marvel's What If. This week's was like, it was interesting, right? I was like, okay, the zombies, how are they gonna explain that? Not that they needed to, but they did, and it turned out that at the start we have Bruce Banner crashing in the Sanctum Sanctorum, and looking for Doctor Strange or whoever's there, and we think it's like, oh, okay, it's like the beginning of Infinity War, like that's what's about to happen.
Right.
And then he looks out and like nothing's there, and we find out, oh snap, like what's going on here? And like, oh, it's zombies. Like, okay, shit. And so from there we have like the little tropes. We have the beginning. Is it Ebony Maw and like Squidward, or is that Ebony Maw?
Ebony Maw is Squidward.
And then was it Corvus Glade? Who's the big boy with the
Corvus Glaive? Yeah.
Okay, those two. Corvus Glaive.
No, wait, no.
Isn't it?
No, it's
He's so forgettable. I don't know.
Black something.
Anyway, Hammer Dude from Infinity War,
Yeah.
Hammer Abomination Hulk guy from Infinity War and Squidward are are here to wreck some stuff on behalf of Thanos. And then Iron Man, I think Doctor Strange and Wong show up, right?
Right.
And then they're here to wreck some stuff too. But oh wait, they're zombies. Oh snap! And Bruce Banner's still having his issues. And long story short, we ended up running in. He gets saved by I think Janet Van Dyne, right? Yeah, he does.
Right.
Great. And we get a little explainer later on that the zombie virus came from them trying to find Hank Pym's wife in the quantum realm, and that's why this is all happening. Great, cool. And so Bruce Banner links up with everyone who's still alive in New York, and it's a bunch of heroes. It's Spider-Man. We have Bucky Barnes, Okoye, Happy Hogan, which is hilarious. Sharon Carter, and then for some reason Kurt from the Ant-Man films, like that Russian dude. He was funny, but I was like, what's going on here? And it took.
I'm surprised we didn't get
Louis
Peña's
yeah,
character.
I was surprised too.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been hilarious. But when we go into learning that it's the plague is so bad because it took down like the core Avengers, which at this time for some reason is Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and then I guess Black Panther. I thought they weren't on good terms, but whatever. Well, I guess it fits. And but it also took down Iron Man and them too, and they're all standing together. Whatever. I guess Civil War didn't happen in this universe. And I guess that spread it quicker because they can all fly and they're superheroes or whatever.
Yeah.
And they still kind of have some intelligence, like they can use their powers. It's the rules are weird and vague and fast.
Yeah, it was weird because like the civilian zombies, they just kind of were zombies.
They were just zombies, but people important to the plot had brains. Kinda.
Yeah. And it's kind of like they had some kind of motive.
Yeah, it was weird.
Beyond normal zombie.
It was bizarre, but the takeaway is that the tone was all over the place of this episode, and I think it's like a 30-minute episode, and it feels like sloppy and a little rushed, and like there's just a lot of weird moments that needed more time to pan out because it's like it threw us right into the world, and that's fine if you're gonna do that, but it was like all over the place. People were going down, dropping like flies. I think we lost Happy first. And then eventually, who else did we lose? I
think Sharon was shortly after.
Yeah, and I think I know at one point the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, she gets hit, right? She gets hit, but she's not exactly. They're trying to, start a bus and go find a cure down the road, and then she's about to turn, and then like in a sacrifice. Like there's a lot of great moments too that I'm skimming over. Like she has a really good talk with Peter, and she's like, "How are you so optimistic despite everything that's happening?"
Right.
So there's some good character moments in there, and there's some good comedy in there, but it's just all over the place. And then we get to that complex, and then Vision's there. I'm like, "Oh, we're saved." Like Vision's a smart dude, but then he has ulterior motives. When
apparently
we find out he's just trying to feed his little zombified Wanda Maximoff with none other than the Black Panther's like legs. I'm like, what's going on here? This is so dark and weird. And we're like, Bruce Banner's kind of like the audience because he's him like us. We're like, what's going on? Like, what is all this?
Yeah.
And then in a weird twist, like Black Panther, Spider-Man, and someone else make it out of there, right? And maybe it's we get Paul Rudd's like floating Futurama head.
Right.
He was funny, but I was like, what is going on with this episode? Like, what is happening? And because
it was like
Vision had cured.
Like, what would happen if the Avengers were in a World War Z movie?
That's what it what it felt like. And it was cool. Like they had the little like tropes and stuff. But I'm like, dude, this is so crazy. Like I know we're all over the place, but this episode was all over the place. I mean, remember Spider-Man's little like so you want to survive in the zombie apocalypse video? That was cute.
He's a little
that was cute. Like that was true to his character.
I think they were trying to reference
like Homecoming,
Zombieland.
Oh, Zombieland. That makes sense.
Homecoming because that's what he did
at the beginning.
I think he also did it in Far From Home.
Did he really? I don't remember.
Well, it wasn't him, but it was his classmates.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. So it's very like on brand for them and people in their age. I get it, but it was just I was like, what is going on? How are we going from like some really dark stuff to like this? But it's cool. It's like it just goes to show like even in the darkest of times they have to have hope. So I get that.
Right.
And then of course there's that huge sacrifice where Janet Van Dyne goes like giant to throw them or like walk them over to the facility and then just gets eaten up. And that's horrible. And then like there's the whole like Sebastian Stan side story where like he like has to off Captain America, and it's just like there's almost no stakes there. I was like, okay, like he's not Cap anymore, and they do that to the end of the line bit, but it's just like I don't know how much intelligence did he have? Like how impactful was that?
It seemed like they were already so well ingrained into the zombie
there wasn't like
aspect. It wasn't like like they started to look at everybody as just
another
zombies.
zombie.
and
Yeah,
not-
there was no emotional weight to it, is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Even though like they kind of played it like there was, I didn't feel like there was. But anyway, Vision also changes his mind at some point and decides.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
I didn't understand his motive in doing that.
Yeah, his just the whole arc. I
Yeah.
didn't. It just kind of threw it in.
It was just like, yeah, Vision's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
And
was
I
weird.
thought maybe he had something to do with the cure. I mean, he did.
He did.
He gave the Mind Stone. But I thought maybe there was more to it.
I thought there was too, but he kind of just changes his mind.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I made an error. And then he helps him to like a Quinjet. I was like, all right.
He's like, I was feeding her people, but
But now I know what's wrong.
now I know.
It's like, what?
Don't do that.
Not good for you. Or for humanity.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like we said, Bruce sacrificed himself too, but I feel like he's the Hulk. I don't think he really sacrificed anything. I think he's invulnerable. He'll be fine to bites, won't
Probably.
he? He'll be fine. He'll be alone,
Yeah.
but he'll be fine. They'll find him. They'll fly over. Maybe he can help in the Wakanda fight if he can jog across the world in time.
Yeah, it does seem like they are setting this up to be a continued.
A lot of these feel like that.
Continued?
A
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
these feel like that. And I really hope some of them for sure get a part 2. Some of them I'm like, whatever. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So we'll see. But, Peter reflects that almost all the Avengers are gone now, and T'Challa consoles them, saying, those who are in my culture, death is not the end. They're with us as long as we don't forget them. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So, like, every time he comes on screen, I'm like, oh, he's dead. I'm sad. But other than that, like, it was cool, and it's sad that we won't see that moment in live action, because
Mhm.
like it'd be cool to see some of those like crossovers. You know what I mean? Like hopefully Spider-Man and like the Wasp have some of those really endearing moments in live
Yeah,
action,
yeah.
because that worked. I was like, wow, like this is
yeah,
really
yeah,
a big
and
universe.
it surprised me that it wasn't Tom Holland who voiced
Yeah, that guy did a really
voice
good
Peter
job.
Parker.
What was his name? I have it written down somewhere.
Hudson Thames.
Hunter Thames is what I have written down here.
Oh, okay.
But either way, he's a Thames. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, he did a really good job. It was pretty convincing. So where do they find these voice actors? Nah,
Right.
it was good.
Yeah.
But as a whole, the episode was kind of like just all over the place. There was funny moments. There was like, this should be sad moments, and then there was just
Yeah.
confusing, just like we need to move this plot along business. But having seen this week's episode, it's much more concise. I'm not gonna hype you up too much, but I'm really looking forward to this, because whereas both of these episodes are like 33 minutes, give or take, this
Mhm.
one felt like a really weird rush 20-minute episode, and the one that you need to watch, episode 6, felt like an hour movie, and it was only like in 33 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it felt tight. It was good. So I'm really looking forward to
Wow.
talking about that episode with you soon. But this podcast has gone on long enough. We're gonna have to do some editing. So
Yeah.
with that, a really fun, solid Media Munchers. And for Media Munchers, I'm Mathian.
And I'm Adrian.
We'll catch you next time.